Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
Welcome to Nevada Newsmakers. On the broadcast today, Congresswoman Dina Titus is here. She's here for the whole show on an all-new Nevada Newsmakers.
Hello, is this D&D Roofing?
Yes, it is. How may I help you?
You did such a great job on my roof. May I speak to the owner?
I am an owner.
Oh, can I speak to your supervisor?
Sure.
How may I help you?
I love your work. May I speak to the owner?
I am an owner. We're all owners. Well, that's why at D&D we work so hard to keep your home safe and sound.
Oh, no wonder.
D&D Roofing and Sheet Metal. Local, employee-owned, here for you.
Retail's impact on Nevada's economy? Enormous. 8,600 businesses, large and small, employing 145,000 workers. And last fiscal year, retail paid tax on nearly $60 billion in sales. We're the Retail Association of Nevada. We support retail, we help it grow, and we mean business.
RANNV.org.
Take a look at Pro Group Management and see how your workers' comp requirements can be met head-on. By taking a proactive approach, Pro Group can assure that your company is meeting or exceeding state and federal standards. As you move forward in your industry, Pro Group moves with you, simplifying regulatory tasks, clearing the way so you can get the job done and look to your future success. Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
Early in the morning or throughout the night, professional truck drivers are on the job, serving you, safely moving freight that's crucial to our economy. From the oldest industries to our newest innovators, from the exotic to the everyday, trucks are everywhere, moving everything. Never afraid to embrace a future that makes Nevada and our nation stronger. Trucking moves America forward.
This is Nevada Newsmakers with host Sam Shad, a no-holds-barred political forum. Now, from the Nevada Newsmakers broadcast headquarters, here is Sam Shad.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we're always pleased to welcome back to the program Congresswoman Dina Titus of CD1. Great to have you back.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to see you, Sam.
And sorry you've got a little bit of a cold. I had one last week as well, so glad it's not COVID, though.
I'm tested and boosted, so I get everybody to do the same thing.
Yes, ma'am. I am vaccinated and boosted as well. So let's start out, obviously, on a serious note. The Ukrainian president is going to address Congress on Wednesday. The news that is coming out today is just as bad. The talks have been put off for another day with the Russians. What are your thoughts at this point?
Well, we had a briefing with the president in the Foreign Affairs Committee last week, and he's a most impressive person. They say he's almost Churchillian the way he has risen to the occasion in leading his country. This behavior by Russia is just totally unacceptable. But the one thing that is positive of it is that it has united the U.S. and Europe. President Biden stepped in within 3 days and had all of NATO together. So if Putin wanted to undermine NATO, he did just the opposite. But there are already procedures in place to take Russia to the World Court in The Hague for war crimes with this bombing of civilians. You know, he bombed a maternity hospital, shelling of cities that are not military targets. So the behavior is just, he seems to be determined that he's going to win this and push his influence further and further. I think Moldova and some of the other countries, Poland is worried that he's not going to stop just with Ukraine.
All right, so the big question here is, where does this end? Because, you know, let's face it, the reality is we're already at the beginning stages of World War III. We just haven't gone all the way. What are your concerns?
Well, that's right. If you look at those pictures, you've never seen anything like that since the 30s and 40s. It looks like World War II has already taken place. You know, we're bound by Article 5 of NATO. An attack on one of us is an attack on all of us. And he's certainly pushing the red line. He bombed the base very close to Poland. That could be a problem. What he's doing with the nuclear power plants, we don't know, but that could certainly be a problem. The new threat that he might use chemical weapons, you know, they say he's going to do whatever it is he's accusing the U.S. of doing. So that's a sign that that might be coming. The president wants the U.S. air cover. Right now, once we do that, that's the same as boots on the ground. So there's reluctance by NATO and the U.S. to provide that air cover, but we are certainly providing as many weapons as possible through the bordering NATO countries into Ukraine to help them in this ground war. And 2.5 million people have left Ukraine. They're in Eastern Europe where they're being taken in, but the U.S. is going to have to step up to help refugees as well.
Are you feeling the same level of bipartisanship on this issue that we appear to be seeing through our televisions?
Well, there was this issue that had both sides standing up and applauding during President Biden's State of the Union address. And the poll number shows over 70% of the people are willing to take a little increase in gas prices to do the right thing and help Ukraine. So far, that's been nonpartisan, with the exception of just a few Republicans who are Putin Republicans. You saw that from the guy from North Carolina. You've seen it come out a little bit from the folks in Florida, but by and large, it is bipartisan. And that's the way it's always been in the past, that partisanship stops at the water's edge.
There was an op-ed in the New York Times from a Chinese businessman who does a lot of work between China and the United States and Europe. And he was saying that he feels, and one presumes because of his position that he is reflecting the Chinese government, that the Chinese government could have a role in ramping this down. Do you believe that?
I think it's possible. Right now, they're kind of sitting back and letting two of their enemies fight each other. But there's certainly a role for them. You know, we have put in place the toughest economic sanctions ever, and the Russian economy is just devastated because of those sanctions. Europe has also put in place some sanctions. We're looking to China, but Russia is also looking to China to provide equipment, war equipment. So we'll see which way China goes. Another country that may be able to play a role in kind of bringing this to a ceasefire is Israel. And so we were trying to use diplomacy as much as possible, get a ceasefire and then get a resolution. But the Russians don't seem to want to have a ceasefire, and the talks keep breaking down.
One of the things that has been remarkable about Israel's role is that they have the ability to converse directly with Putin through the prime minister, because they negotiate over all the actions in Syria, where they warn each other when they are going to do actions, and so therefore not engaging each other. Don't you find that rather remarkable?
Well, we'll look wherever we can to find people engaged. And if that is true for Israel, then we'd certainly want to take advantage of it. Don't forget the whole Iran nuclear deal is pending out there too. And that has consequences for what Israel wants to do as well. So it's a very complicated spider web of relationships.
Yeah, I was going to say the ultimate in three-dimensional chess. You know, China has a lot of interest here because, you know, they own so much United States debt that they would hardly want to see the United States go down. At the same time, their trade with Ukraine and Russia is dramatic.
Well, that's right. And don't forget, Ukraine provides a large percentage of the whole world's wheat. So that will affect us. The price of wheat, the price of bread, as just like the price of oil is being affected by what's going on over there.
Did you, via intelligence, have any warning that this was coming, say, 3 months ago, 6 months ago? Because obviously moving 130,000 troops is not something that happens in a vacuum.
Well, that's right, Sam. But most people, including Ukraine itself, thought that this was saber rattling on the part of the Russians, that as more of those Eastern European countries looked to the West and wanted to join the EU or join NATO, he'd had enough. And so he was going to move in to say, look, if you don't get back in the fold, this is what can happen to you. But I don't think anybody really, or not certainly in public knowledge, anticipated this kind of brutal war.
What kind of response is the Congress getting from the Russian people? The media has been essentially shut down except for the government-run media. What kind of feedback are you receiving, if you are, from the Russian people?
Well, several things. You've seen the demonstrations in Russia. Everybody from people on the streets to some of their pop stars are protesting the war. Also, some of the Russian soldiers who have defected in Ukraine are telling stories that they never anticipated this, and they are trying to get in touch with their own families to tell them what's really going on, as opposed to what the government propaganda is about what's going on.
And the morale of the soldiers, what we're led to believe, and what is it? The first consequence of war, the first casualty of war is the truth. So it's hard to know from any direction what is really true, but what we're hearing is that the morale of the soldiers invading Ukraine has been so low because they weren't anticipating going after essentially their own people.
Well, that's right. The soldiers didn't anticipate that Ukraine would fight back to such an extent that it has, because many of the people in Ukraine have relatives in Russia. They are Russian themselves. Some of them speak Russian. So the Russians didn't anticipate there would be this kind of resistance and determination to protect Ukraine. Also, it's interesting that the Russian military was not nearly as prepared as some people might have anticipated, and their equipment seems to be old and breaking down. All their logistics have not been very good. And you see that long truck line coming in. Motorcade coming into Kyiv, and it's all stuck in the mud. So those trucks, as they break down, are being taken over by Ukrainians, and a lot of those soldiers are defecting. Most of those trucks just have supplies in them, not armaments, but still they're losing that to kind of these forays by the Ukrainians.
All right, let's take a break and come back and talk about the ramifications, not just in the United States, but specifically in Nevada, after this time out.
Before the masks, before the distancing, before the world changed, UMC was ready. Our response to COVID-19 began before the crisis did, with our own team of infectious disease experts who've spent their careers planning for this moment. With a pandemic response plan, we'd practiced again and again, and by blazing new trails in large-scale testing, including every patient we admit. Always ready. UMC.
As you know, Reno is booming. Toll's development company is helping it grow with insightful design and development, building community with every project, adding beauty, adding excitement, emphasizing our shared humanity. Reno is becoming bigger. Toll's development is helping it become better, more livable, more enjoyable. To learn more, go to tollsdevelopment.com. tollsdevelopment.com.
I'm Jeff Gehrman, an investigative reporter with the Las Vegas Review-Journal. I'm your guide for Season 2 of Mobbed Up, The Fight for Las Vegas.
You're in with every gangster and hoodlum in the United States.
I don't go for that, Mr. Kennedy. I don't go for that kind of action.
I was on television accused of fronting for the mob.
Subscribe to Mobbed Up, The Fight for Las Vegas, Season 2, today on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Modern boutique Ahern Hotel and Events Center in Las Vegas. Host meetings and events on 2 floors. Stay in luxurious rooms and suites. Unlimited branding opportunities. Regional Italian cuisine by Chef Mark Segrisi. Flexible event spaces. Full buyout options. Visit ahernhotel.com today.
Hi, I'm Renee Summer, our digital news anchor here at 7 at 7. Watch our streaming nonstop newscast immediately with your mobile phone. 7 at 7 is the new way for you to get every bit of local news you need in just 7 minutes. Breaking news, local neighborhood news, weather, and sports are just a click away. Reporters bring you all of what's happening in the Valley. From Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, YouTube, and more. Get every bit of local news you need from the RJ and LVRJ.com.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we continue our conversation with Congresswoman Dina Titus of CD1. So, you know, obviously you brought it up yourself earlier, gas prices are an issue, and gas prices are already well over $5. If you go to a Shell station or any other name brand, you're looking at $5.45, $5.50. What do you think the response is going to be? In previous crises, we've seen the hotel casino industry provide gas cards. Is that something that they're talking to you about? Because your district encompasses the Strip.
Well, that's right. It's not just people who are driving around in Nevada, but those are pretty long distances too. So the price of gas matters to them, but it's the impact on tourists. You know, a lot of our tourists drive up from Southern California for the weekend. And if gas prices go too high, that will hit that tourist market. You know, gas prices in Nevada are typically higher than many parts of the country, much like California. And they had started going up before this invasion, but certainly our saying that we're not going to buy any oil and gas from Russia will move them up further. This is the thing though, Sam, I believe that those gas and oil companies already have enough licensing and enough ability to drill already approved. They just find that it's easier and more profitable to raise prices rather than raise supply. So the amount we get from Russia is a very small amount, but the corporations we are worried about them gouging people in a time of emergency. You see that all the time. Look at the price of Johnny paper and bread that went up in the beginning days of COVID. So there are a number of efforts in Congress to get at gouging. I've called on the FTC to do that. Here in Nevada, Aaron Ford, our Attorney General, has said, report to us any kind of gouging that you see. But you're right, people say now they'll go along with the gas prices because we're doing the right thing. And interesting, where partisanship comes back into all this that you brought up, Sam, is that the Republicans were calling on the president to boycott that oil. And the minute he did, then they blamed the president for raising the price of gas. You really can't have it both ways, but it's a very simplistic way to try to define inflation.
Is the price high enough to restart the fracking industry?
To restart what? I'm sorry.
The fracking industry?
Well, I'm push to drill offshore, and there'll be a push to drill in the Arctic. That's what they like. But there are already enough provisions and enough licenses and enough permissions for drilling that aren't being used. So we don't need to expand it. We just need to use the ones that have already been issued.
One of the things that I don't think Americans think of these days, in a world where we order something from Amazon and it may arrive the same day, let alone the next day, is this is not going to end quickly. This is going to go on for quite a long time.
Well, it is. They say it's going to be protracted over several months, not several days. And so we're going to see this continue. Now, one of the big things that goes back to the COVID days is the supply chain and how it was slowed down. You saw all the ships in the harbor and around Los Angeles, getting things from Canada by rail. All of those things have broken down. A big article in the paper about the price of chicken wings. You can't get chicken wings, and that's bad in the sports season. So those things predate this war. They go back to some of the issues that started during COVID, where there was greater demand than supply because of those supply chains and because of just the way you couldn't get out and get things done.
Do you think it's going to be weeks rather than maybe months, if not years?
Well, I hope it's not years. It would only be years if Russia succeeds and puts in a shadow government or in Ukraine. Doesn't look like Ukraine is going to want to let that happen. But if they start to take over, it will certainly be subversive actions on the ground against the Soviets. You've seen that they're not welcoming the Soviets with open arms, or will be supportive of a puppet government of Putin's.
One of the things that airlines do is they buy gasoline, years out. They put in their orders and set the price. How long before that runs out and we start to see increased prices for airline tickets, which would then affect our convention business?
Right, that will be a problem, and that convention business is just coming back. The tourists are here, the gaming revenues are up, but the conventions are slower to come back because just of logistics of getting them settled. It will impact airline prices, but again, you've got to be sure that they're not just using that as an excuse to raise the cost of a ticket. And very often when the corporations raise the price, then when whatever existed to cause them to raise it is over, they never go back down to where they started. And those are kind of things that we're going to have to be sure don't happen, so that the everyday citizen doesn't bear the brunt of this while the corporate leaders get richer and richer.
All right, let's take another break, and we'll be back with Congresswoman Dina Titus after this timeout.
Can't do it. Stupid, like my mom.
We can't do anything at Mommy's because you won't pay child support.
Dad said you cheated, and he's not even sure he's my dad.
Mommy said you left both of us, so she isn't gonna let me see you. I look just like my father.
I'm divorce attorney Marilyn York, and I may represent men, but hate has no gender, only casualties. Please, stop sacrificing your children in your war against your ex.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we continue our conversation with Congresswoman Dina Titus of CD1. Can't let you get away without talking about a little bit about politics. As we talk to some folks, election integrity is the #1 issue for them. For others, it's the economy and inflation. Let's start with the election integrity. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, there's still people saying that the last election was stolen and that Donald Trump won that, and he's got his minions out there repeating that story, and some of them are even in Congress. The woman from Georgia, she's always talking about the stolen election. Arizona, how many times have they recounted the ballots there? But we've not had that problem in Nevada. Our Secretary of State stood up, and she was a Republican, but she said, this is the way we do it, this is how we did it, and it was not a stolen election. There weren't the problems that people say there are. So I'm confident that that will continue in Nevada.
Do you think that one of the biggest election issues in Nevada is going to be childhood education and things that were lost during COVID? And how much heat will the governor take for that?
Well, certainly we're seeing all over the country parents angry at school boards, and they go to meetings and they holler and they don't want children to wear a mask and all of that. But if you think about the CARES Act and the Recovery Act that we passed last summer to get shots in arms and children in school and people back in jobs, that has been very successful. Rather than talking about what we haven't done, we need to talk about what we have done. Children are going to school now. We're trying to make up for the time that they lost. We're getting broadband so children can have computers in their homes or in some of the older schools, like in my district. More people are getting vaccinated. More people have gone back to work. In fact, a lot of the pundits, economic scholars, have said that Nevada is the fastest recovering state in the union. We had 34% unemployment. That's the highest we've ever had, and the highest in the country. And we've dropped that down to about 5%. That's pretty incredible.
How upset are you about the redistricting of your district?
Well, they splintered the district, and I'll run wherever the lines are, of course. And I've always been a fighter for all of Nevada, so that part doesn't matter. But the two things that are bad. The district was a cohesive district that had a lot of issues in common. whether it was immigration with the Asian and the Hispanic population, or the gaming, all of that it was a real cohesive district. And I've spent 10 years getting to know and love and help the people in that district. I care about that district. Some people don't seem to care. You draw the lines wherever you want. It's just about getting reelected. So I worry that those people won't have representation. So that's kind of where I'm coming from on this.
Tick Segablum lost his race to run the state party to somebody running to the left of him, which was a shock to most people that know Tick Segablum, because it's hard to find somebody to the left of Tick Segablum. You're also getting a challenge from the left. How concerned are you?
Well, that's interesting. I'm the most progressive person in the delegation, and yet the party has been taken over by the Democratic Socialists. They call themselves socialists. And the left targets certain districts that are safe districts so they can win the primary and then been home free in the general. As it turns out, you're not home free in the general now in this district. This is the worst district in the state. After having been the best district, it's now the worst. So, we'll do what we have to do. I'm progressive, but I don't believe in defunding the police. I'm for Medicare for all, but you got to do it in a step-by-step process. Remember, when I voted for Obamacare, it had the public option in it out of the House. I'm for every environmental issue out there. I'm the one who started all this renewable energy portfolio standards and tax breaks and all, but I can't just say overall Green New Deal, because that's a push towards nuclear power. And until you solve the nuclear waste issue, I don't think we need to be developing more nuclear power.
And that's where we have to leave it. Congresswoman, I wish you well, and get over your cold and safe journey back to DC. Thank you for being here.
Good to see you, Sam.
And we'll be right back. Brian Culpa Photography was born in the rolling hills of Massachusetts, and now he can help you experience the stunning beauty of Nevada in a whole new way through the power of flight. Flying has always been a passion for Brian, and at Brian Culpa Photography, he can make your imagination soar. Brian has the creative mind and tools to tell your unique story. Experience the bird's eye view at brianculpaphotography.com.
The Nevada Builders Alliance has been protecting the interests of the construction industry for over 50 years.
Our programs save members thousands of dollars every year and allow them to provide much-needed benefits to their employees. Our industry also allows Nevada to grow. If you're thinking about a career in the construction industry, reach out. And if you haven't thought of a career in construction, what are you waiting for? We are the Nevada Builders Alliance.
As you know, Reno is booming. Toll's development company is helping it grow with insightful design and development, building community with every project, adding beauty, adding excitement, emphasizing our shared humanity. Reno is becoming bigger. Toll's development is helping it become better, more livable, more enjoyable. To learn more, go to tollsdevelopment.com. tollsdevelopment.com.
Pro Group Management specializes in providing industries with the necessary components to satisfy and exceed workers' comp requirements. Every business has unique needs and specific regulations. Pro Group Management stays ahead of the curve, providing up-to-date services to keep your industry in top form. Discover how we simplify your tasks, improve efficiency, and reduce expense to keep you moving in a positive direction. Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
As always, you can watch Nevada Newsmakers 24 hours a day at NevadaNewsmakers.com. You can also check our archive going back to 2005 on our website. Again, NevadaNewsmakers.com. We'll see you on the next show.